Good morning and welcome to another weekly update for you. It's Friday the 21st of February, so we've just got to the end of the week of course maintenance week, so hopefully a really interesting video update for you today of the course maintenance week we've just had, what we've done and why we do it and why it's so important to have these course maintenance weeks to maintain the greens in the golf course to the standard that we do. So we have two major course maintenance weeks throughout the year. One is sort of a spring one that we do late winter, very early spring, and then another one that we do the back end of the season. So normally we do that just after Champion of Champions, so at the end of September that works out at. I found through the industry that traditionally they've always been done in the spring, but that's been brought further forward into the calendar year. Recent weather trends, certainly over the last, pretty much since I've been in greenkeeping, the last 10, 15 years, that we've experienced very cold springs, cold, dry springs with not a lot of growth. So we get very, very close to the golfing season, and we go and do this procedure of spiking and putting sand out, and then you don't get the growth and the recovery, and it's hanging around for a long time as we feel like we've entered the golfing season. So through experience, I've experienced this at other golf clubs where we've brought it further forward. So to do it sort of catching the end of the winter, what I tend to find is you get just as good a recovery, if not better recovery this time of year than you do in March, than a cold snap in March or April. So that's why I'd aim to do it end of January or into February, get it done, because one of the major factors is there's still quite a bit of moisture hanging around in the soil, which really helps with the recovery. Whereas as the profile and the soil can dry out in March or April and it can still be cold, you're not getting the temperatures and not getting the moisture for the recovery. Whereas at least this time of year we're still getting the moisture, and with a good fertilizer application, it's got a bit longer until the golfing season to recover. I'd rather it take 3 weeks to recover this time of year than take 3 weeks to recover in March or April as you start to get into the golfing season. So that's why we bring it forward into February, forward in the calendar year into February, because we find we got better just as good a recovery earlier in the season, so it's ready to go for end of March, April, and by the end of March, April, you wouldn't know we've done this procedure. The first process we do is to verti-drain the greens. So this is an implement which attaches to the tractor, uses a tine of 300mm deep with a 12mm diameter. It's quite a slow process. This tractor travels at 0.6 miles per hour, so it takes a wee while. It takes around 30 to 45 minutes, depending on the size of the green, to get across the green. And this breaks into the subsoil, so deep tine aeration, and then this therefore gets air and oxygen down, relieves compaction deep down in the soil profile. That will also create a channel to help infiltrate water through there, to help to get as I said, to get water through during rain, so they dry out nicely, and also create a channel for grass roots to travel down, which will improve the quality of the turf. The next process is to use the pedestrian aerifier, Procore. This is where we switch our attention to the top layer of the soil profile. Again, it's a 12mm diameter tine, but we're just going in 60mm here. So as I said, just to work on that top profile. This puts more holes in than the Verti-drain. We've got a nice square pattern there. This also actually helps to close up those holes from the Verti-drain just at the top, in that top 60mm, which is great, because it allows that Verti-drain will go in and create that deep tine, and you can use something called heave as well, so that you get that triangle effect of a size hole, so which is similar to in the photo of the diagram that we just put up there in the last bit of the Verti-drain. So, and then we can close, and so the air and the oxygen is getting down deep in the profile, and then as we work on that top layer, the reason we go behind with the 648 is to help close up the holes at the top of the profile of the Verti-drain, which is good for recovery. So it speeds up the recovery from that Verti-drain tine, and we're creating a new channel to work on the top profile, which is spot on. It's perfect, really. It's good. It works very well for, as I said, for recovery, and to not notice we've done a double lot of holes, if that makes sense. So the pedestrian aerifier gets a lot more holes in there, and that's creating a hole and a channel for us to then top dress, so we can fill that with sand. And this tining also happens on aprons as well. So with Verti-drain, we just focus on the greens to get for the deep tine aeration and to get the water moving through the profile of the greens. The makeup of the greens is quite different to the aprons. I believe that when the greens were first constructed at Ogbourne, there was no irrigation system, so they either imported or quarried relatively heavy material, heavier soil material to put on top of the chalk to help retain the moisture, because if it was the same profile as we have around the rest of the golf course on sort of fairways and aprons and tees and everywhere else, they would dry out very, very quickly. So a thicker layer of topsoil was put on top of the greens to retain the moisture, because irrigation systems never used to exist when it was first built. So that's why we do the deep tine aeration we're able to do the deep tine aeration with the Verti-drain, whereas we wouldn't want to put the Verti-drain in the aprons, because they would very quickly go through to the chalk. So this Pro Cord comes behind, hits the greens and the aprons in one fell swoop. So this obviously travels, from the video you can see it travels a bit quicker than the Verti-drain, which works out quite well. So the Verti-drain goes ahead, gets all those deep tine aeration in. It's quite a slow process, but just focuses on the green, and then the pedestrian 648 aerator comes in, works on the top profile to create a hole to put sand channels in on the greens and the aprons, and doing the aprons as well as part of the green, that whole green and aprons complex. That sort of slows the job down to create a nice production line of aerating. So the tractor's going ahead, and then the 648 is coming in, helping to close those Verti-drain holes up and create a new channel for us to put sand in on both the greens and apron, which, as I said, creates a nice production line for going through and aerating. So the next process is to apply the sand. This is applied using our Toro Workman. So it's a multi-use vehicle where it has a back bed and a top dresser implement to go on. So we only top dress half a dozen times a year, really. So so the top dressing unit sits on and attaches to one of the utility vehicles, the Toro utility vehicle you see us driving around using every day, with a back bed on to carry materials or tools in. So so that goes on, and then applies sand around. On greens, we do a double pass, and that adds up to around 40 tons per hectare, and the aprons have just one pass, so that's about 20 tons per hectare. And how that usually works out very well, to get the holes filled, to have enough sand to fill in all the holes from the spiking the aeration in that top profile. And then any excess sand we've got, we can brush off onto the aprons and try to fill or put a bit more sand in those holes. The sand needs a little bit of time to dry out, so you probably need to leave it for a minimum of hour and a half for it to dry out before it can be then brushed into the holes. This piece of kit is the key to recovery, really, to top up all those holes with the sand. That helps recovery in itself. If you leave the holes open, it takes a long time for them close back up, and you almost haven't achieved a huge amount long term, in terms of you've just opened that surface up, let air get in there to dilute thatch for a month or 6 weeks, however long it takes to recover, and those holes are just being pushed back together. So so it doesn't create. Whereas if you fill them with sand, that creates channels of which air will get in better into the sand than it will the soil. Sand has larger molecules, and therefore than heavier soils, which are heavier soils are much smaller in particles, and get compacted. Whereas the sand doesn't get compacted as much, because it has larger particles and air can pass through that, and having air present in that topsoil of the profile will constantly just break down thatch and constantly create a channel for roots to thrive, where they can get air and even water to infiltrate through that top 60 mil profile. So that's the reason why we work at those two different depths. They're both doing different jobs at different layers of the profile. But yeah, that's a real key, to get the sand in the holes, and then any excess sand, once the holes are filled with sand, then the excess can get pushed off into the apron and help either fill those holes or get a bit more sand in those holes. So that's the whole process of what we did on the greens and the aprons, and why we do it. So to maintain these greens well, and stop compaction happening over time. Because if you just leave something and leave it and don't do these processes, compaction will build up and thatch will build up, which results in basically spongy, uneven greens which don't drain. Ultimately, to put it in a nutshell. So these works are essential twice a year to ensure those things don't happen, and we maintain a good level of a good soil profile underneath the turf, which will allow that turf to thrive and create good putting surfaces. So the team have done a fantastic job this week. It's as you can probably see and tell, it's a long process, and you need the right conditions to do certain jobs in. For example, the sand you have to have dry conditions to do the sand. It's always the biggest worry is getting a wet week during maintenance, because that's fine for putting the holes in and doing the aeration, but you can't work that sand into the profile to fill those holes and get recovery, because the sand just caps and it won't work its way into the holes at all, and it just gets pushed around to the sides and just gets thick and it's just a no-go really. So we also had frosts early mornings. We actually found that we were fine to aerate, so we carried on Verti-draining and putting the 648 tine out during the frost. That actually worked quite well. It didn't affect it too much while the ground was hard. And also we applied sand on the Tuesday. We applied sand in those conditions as well, because the ground was pretty solid, but there was no dew under that frost. So that worked out quite well, because we knew we weren't putting sand onto a sort of a white frost, if you like, which is going to where moisture will occur when that thaws out. So and that was ideal for driving around the golf course as well, because as soon as it starts to thaw out, it did create a lot of tracks as we're driving around, but it kept that transportation tracks down to a minimum the best we could. And then in the afternoons we went out once it thawed out and the sand had opportunity to dry out. So we to really brush the sand into those holes. And then the weather forecast was against us in terms of Wednesday was drizzly and Thursday, Friday were very wet as well. So we knew the weather was up against us. So we knew we had to pretty much get all that done by Monday, Tuesday, which is what we did. We just worked from first light till dark on Monday and Tuesday to get that done. And then we know that, and then the weather can then be our friend. The only area we sort of did get caught out was the short game area. The brush the brush broke on us on the short game area on the Wednesday when we were trying to brush some of that in, which we were struggling with because, as I said, it was quite drizzly, so we're struggling to get the sand in the holes. So yeah, the brush broke down on us, and it started to rain as well. So yeah, short game area maybe closed for a wee while, and we'll just draw our attention, get the brush fixed, and draw our attention to that over next week or so, and we'll get that back as soon as we can, so you can get back to chipping on there. But yeah, as I said, the boys did a fantastic job, very flexible, working lots of overtime to get all that work done early in the week before the bad weather came in. Because then, yeah, as I said, you can allow the rain to be your friend and help wash that sand in. So after the main works were done on the greens and aprons, we wanted to take advantage of this course maintenance week while it was sort of accepted that some greens would be on temporaries to do the drainage works on 1 and 3. So the club have invested and bought a tractor auger, which you can see here. We're trying to find ways to try and help these puddles disappear without having to put sort of major drainage works on, which will because if we have to do proper drainage work and pipe work, then we'll have to close these greens for a week or two for the work to be done, and then potentially a bit of time for the turf to recover as well. Because we'd have to lay a pipe all the way along the side of the green and then go across the green into the bank for an outlay. So we're trying to use these tractor auger to drill holes and create large sand soakaways to help those puddles infiltrate through the ground and get them gone a bit quicker. So that process has been to remove the turf. This is the area on the first, which is the worst, where the worst puddle hangs around for the longest. So we've actually put 5 holes in here. But yes, it consists of the tractor auger going down about 1 metre and just really going deep down into that chalk, and then removing all that material, backfilling it with sand to create a sand soakaway for, as I said, the water to pass through. So as mentioned, we did 5 holes in the worst area of the puddle, and then we've done 3 on the first half of the green and 2 at the back of the green as well, just to help all the water go through. And once all that's sort of sand's been filled and it's all been smoothed off and leveled off, and the turf's ready to go back on. And these will they've been returfed, and then these will be GUR for a wee while we wait for them to recover. But yeah, as I said, hopefully, touch wood, this should really help to get the water moving through the profile a bit quicker, and so the puddles aren't hanging around so bad on these greens. And whilst doing this job, we've also levelled off the area where the worst puddle was on 1. It was becoming a real bowl and dip where and just really sinking in that area. So as we've topped, before we put the turf back on, we've topped that area up to level it off, so it sort of it's much more level on that passing green. And at the back right of the third green, we managed to put 4 of these soakaway points in at the back here, and then I've got all that returfed on there. And we had a good and interesting find while we were digging down on 3. We did see this on 1 as well, but particularly I managed to take a photo of it on 3. You see there's 3 sand channels going down towards that chalk. That's from the drill and fill work that we did. So this really good image of what we're trying to achieve, where we put that Verti-drain tine in, fill that hole with sand nice and deep down, 250 mil. Down into the profile, and then fill that with sand, so that gives a channel for that. That's what helps the water infiltrate through the profile and get down to that chalk. And so what we're trying to do with these sand soakaways is to do big versions of those. So it's got a necessary number of points to infiltrate down, but we will continue on with these works. So these soakaways supported by that drill and fill process. We'll keep on with the drill and fill process, and then maybe go a little bit, potentially a little bit deeper, maybe put some larger tines in, so we know now we sort of can see how deep the chalk is. Just because if we can get that sand almost touching that chalk, then that's going to really help help infiltrate that water through those areas, and as I said, all that to avoid having that long and expensive process of doing drainage works. So that is all for this week, folks. Hopefully that's quite an interesting insight into what we do, why we do it. I fully appreciate and understand. It creates quite a lot of disruption, and surfaces aren't their usual performance after doing these works, but it's so important to do them, and it only creates for better greens throughout the year. So as I said, again, just a massive thanks to the team for the hard work that they've put in and being so flexible, and what they've done this week. They'll reap the rewards of that. We very much live in a give and take world, but yeah, again, just thanks for the team, and back onto some normality and projects again next week. So look forward to catching up with you again next week.